we're very excited about this topic today. I'm just going to quickly share my screen again and just talk through this a short deck that we have. Kevin and I are going to be talking through. We also have some amazing panelists on today, which will allow them to introduce themselves. But before we do that, I'll just introduce, for those of you who don't know, myself, and then Kevin will jump on and introduce himself, and then we will open up to introduce the panelists also. So within these, so I'm Antonio. I'm the CEO of Forward and Move and Leo. Kevin and I, we run a couple of businesses together. And these sessions were designed because during the pandemic, Kevin and I would wake up in the morning, and the first thing we'd do is we'd jump on a war room every single day to discuss certain topics internally within the business and also what the market's doing as well. And then we realized actually, wouldn't it be great if we could open it up so that other leaders could come on, share their views, thoughts, what initiatives they're running inside their businesses with the global business community, and just have really good conversations. So that's pretty much where the war rooms have started. And I think we've done sort of 6 one over the past 6 months, and they're really entertaining conversations, so and interesting, and we'll get a lot of value from them, and we hope that you guys do too. Today's one, as I said, is 4-day working week. This is what we're discussing, and there are people on the panel who have actually implemented a 4-day working week, and I can't wait to find out the results of that and learn from their insights. And we also have people who are on the panel who believe that actually the 4-day working week doesn't work for specifically for certain sectors, right? And I'm coming from the recruitment sector myself, and a lot of the people on the call today. Does it work for recruitment? That's what we're interested to find out. So really excited to get into this today, guys. Thanks again for joining, and I will hand over to Kevin Childs.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name's Kevin, and I'm the CEO of Forward, Move, and Leo. Really looking forward to this topic. I've got some strong, I wouldn't say strong as in like life-changing opinions on it, but certain points of views that I want to try and get out there and discuss. So we'll start off by just introducing the panelists that have joined us today. We were very particular on who we invited because we know there's some strong points of view. So I'm just going to go around and ask people to introduce themselves. And we're going to start. Is David Bricknell with us? David, are you here? David doesn't look like he's here. So we'll get David Stone. David Stone, how are you?
Oh, I don't think we can hear you, David, now.
I'll come back to you, David. We'll go straight to Paul. Paul, how are you? Thanks for joining.
That's all right. I'll take myself on mute first. Yeah, I'm Paul Springle. I've been working in the recruitment space for over 20 years now. Originally started in tech and then spent the lion's share of my career in healthcare recruitment. So the working week, I think, is very prevalent, obviously, in what is a 24/7 sector. Been back in the tech recruitment space for nearly 2 years now as the managing director of Eurobased People.
Thank you so much. And we'll go straight over to Ruth, the CEO of Smart Working Revolution. Be interested to hear what you've got to say about this. So please introduce yourself, Ruth.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I'm Ruth. I'm the CEO of the Smart Working Revolution. We've been implementing different forms of smart working for the last 21 years. I'm an ex-HR director. I live in Cornwall, and I think there's a low-level plane just flying over my cabin right now, so you can probably hear that. We've implemented all sorts of different smart working options into many different organisations, such as Opal, Vauxhall, Saga, Which, Crowdfunder, Welsh Government, and rather a lot of housing groups more recently. So, yeah, interested to hear people's thoughts on the 4-day week.
Thank you so much, Ruth. Right, the next one on my list here is, and excuse me if I don't pronounce this right, Pawan Are you here, Powen?
Yes,
Yes.
I am very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Did I get it
Kevin.
right? Is it Powen?
Yeah, yeah.
Ah,
Close
perfect.
enough. I've heard all variations of it, so that's good. First of all, thank you, Anthony and Kevin, for inviting me here. I'm Pavan Nandraju. I look after a strategic financial services account. Predominantly, my career has been in financial services and IT. Quite a vibrant topic. There is a great resignation and a lot related but separate topics going on. So lots of layers to peel here. Quite excited to be here and share my personal perspective on this topic. Thank you.
Looking forward to that. We've worked closely with emphasis in many spectrums, so looking forward to that. Last, I believe we have, and again, Kenton from Buckingham Futures.
Hi, Ketan from Buckingham Futures. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. Firstly, Kevin. Sort of by way of introduction, I've been working within the recruitment sector for about 25 years now. 23 of those years have been within the environmental sector. I'm the owner and founder of Buckingham Futures. We specialize in environmental health recruitment, and throughout the COVID, we've sort of adapted and changed to a more flexible working approach. And I'm here to sort of share my opinions and also learn about the 4-day working week and how it would work within my sector.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And we'll head
Thank
back
you.
to David Stone to see if we've
Can you
solved.
hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Ah, marvellous. Great. Okay. Hi. Thank you for having me. Right. David Stone, Chief Exec of MRL. MRL Niche International Tech Recruitment Company, established 1997, mainly operating in the world of semiconductors. We've got about 65 staff, offices UK, France, Germany, and we implemented the 4-day week 2.5 years ago now. And it's been dramatically successful, in my considered opinion.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Okay, great. So before we dive into debates and opinions and throw some facts around and get to the bottom of this topic, just kind of some structures so that we don't all talk over each other. I and Antonio, this isn't about us, it's about us hosting and bringing in everyone's opinion into topic. There's a raise your hand button at the bottom. So throughout someone's discussion point, and if you want to talk and question around that topic point, if you just press the raise your hand, and then I'll try and keep tab of who was first, second, and third, and we'll guide around that way. The structure is really simple. Me and Antonio are going to open with some questions, and then guide the conversation around the room. And also those that have joined us as audiences, if you guys have questions that you want to ask the panelists and ourselves, then please, again, raise your hand and do dive in and ask those questions. We've booked an hour and a half with this. We always get to the hour and a half point and conversations have opened up and we're still going. So I'm going to try and control the back end of it, the last sort of 20 minutes, to kind of try and drive it into an hour and a half end, so it doesn't go on for forever. So if it seems like I'm cutting topics short, that's the reason why. So let's get started. And I'm actually I know David Stone in association just by passing it, LinkedIn, etc. So I'm actually going to let David open, because I know that, as he said in that opening, that he's implemented this in the recruitment sector. David, could you just tell us how you did that and what made you decide that? And then you did it 4 years ago. What was the impact you've had there? And I think you'll be a great person to start the conversation off. That'd be really great, David.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so where we came from was, we have quarterly management meetings where the foreign office managers fly over, and the biggest firm, and obviously we don't want to lose people. And it was the German office manager, Enrico, who suggested 4-day week. And at the time I was like, what, do you just want some extra holiday? And he said, no, it's not for me. He said, look at it this way. Our good people will never leave, and more good people will. And so we started looking at it seriously as a project. There's a guy in London called John Nash who runs Nicholson International. They're also a tech international recruitment company. I worked with John at PSD 25 plus years ago. He implemented a 4-day week 5 or 6 years ago now. And he was very kind, gave me loads of advice, help about the implementation, the pitfalls, the things to watch out for. We did a load of studying looking at how Scandinavian companies, because it's quite prevalent across Scandinavia, how the Scandinavian companies had approached it and what to look out for. Then we put it in place as a 6-month trial. So it was basically at that point, in real terms, we've delegated the problem to the staff. You know, everybody loves the concept of a 3-day weekend. And what we're saying is, okay, you've got 6 months to show me that this can work. If it doesn't, we're going to go back to standard. If it does work, it's yours to keep. So, of course, everybody goes at it with gusto. Some people adapted to the changes easier and quicker than others. And dare I say, it was the more mature people who adapted most quickly, because I think they really got the benefit when you've got a busy office job sort of life. Some of the younger people took a little bit longer, but within, I'd say, 2, 3, 4 months, most people had clicked into gear, because it's all about efficiency. It's about getting 5 days worth of work done in 4. So what this means in real terms in my office was there's probably a little bit less chat. There's a little bit less chat about football and Love Island and all that nonsense that you hear in the office every day. And people are getting the job done. And also from a management point of view, it was quite interesting because the management came. I don't want to talk about the weekend right now. I'm getting stuff done. I don't want to talk about football right now. I'm getting stuff done. Yeah, rather than just managers having to go and tell people to focus and get on with it. Everyone became eyes on the prize. Get your stats, your targets, your KPIs hit by Thursday afternoon. And then you've got a 3-day weekend. Thinking, there is no way I want to jeopardize this. I do not want to go back to a standard 5-day working week. It's quite life altering in many respects when you have this freedom given to you. Yeah, because we didn't stretch the hours. So it's a standard working day, Monday to Thursday. So we didn't just cheat and make them work extra hours on those 4 days. And then it is genuinely, legitimately Friday off, fully paid. So there was no reductions in salary, commissions, benefits, paid vacation leave, what have you. And then what we've seen by the end of the trial is that productivity is up about 30% from where it was. Absenteeism, short-term absenteeism is down over 50%. Now, we never used to have a problem or a particular problem with sick notes, but short-term absenteeism has massively decreased, okay? It's difficult to measure the impact on mental health, but when we've done surveys across the staff, everyone has said that they feel happier, they feel better. I'd say that has increased. And of course, we've got plenty of very, very good people now applying and approaching us to join the company, because there are plenty of companies who are just not prepared to consider a 4-day week. So at the moment, it's a bit of a USP for us. And as much as I'm an advocate for it and I'll bang the drum, I don't really want everybody else to, or not everyone else in recruitment doing a 4-day week, because if they do, I'm going to lose my USP and have to come up with a new one. So at the moment, we're just maxing the advantage of that, because not many firms are doing it.
That's amazing, David, and interesting insights there. So let's talk about the attraction piece for staff. So how are you find it? So are the people coming along because they want to work less, or are they actually coming along because it's more about the opportunity they have to have a bit more time with their families? Do you find that anyone or any type of people also don't work well in a 4-day environment?
Yeah. Okay. So at first there was to do very much work and I get a full week's pay, but you weed out those people quite quickly in the interview process. What it's attracting is the more experienced, more mature people who are like, yeah, I don't need this micromanagement. I don't need to be sitting in an office on a Friday afternoon. People get back from lunch and they're generally ticking down the clock until it's pub time. Yeah. And it's, if you can treat people with maturity and with trust, and that's what we're trying, that's the culture we've got in that we're trying to engender. is I'm going to trust you to get your job done. I'm not going to be over your shoulder. You get your job done by Thursday afternoon, have a 3-day weekend, perfect, off you go. I don't want to see anyone in the office on a Friday. I'm in the office now. I'm the only person. It's a 35, 40-man office. I'm the only person in here now, and I've come in this because I can't make the tech work at home, so I've had to come into the office to do this. But there's nobody here, and I'm pleased to see that. Nobody felt they needed to come in and play catch-up, and I'm really encouraged to see that. Yeah.
Amazing. And so, Ruth, jumping over to you, what are your? So we had a little bit of a back and forth on LinkedIn, and you were saying there are more strategies around afoot than just a 4-day working week. What have you seen when you've been working with your clients around smart working?
Yeah. So what we find is that the answer, the type of workforce model that you need as an organization really does depend on your business needs and your customer needs and demands. Is most important, because what you don't want to do is not be there to service the needs of your customers. So yeah, it really is different in every organization, and I would advise any leaders who are thinking about moving to the 4-day week to look at what their business needs in terms of smart working. There's 50 different options in our smart workforce model that we've developed over the last 20 years. And they are a mix of location and contract types. So for some organizations, the 4-day week does work. For other organizations, it really does not. And I think the most important point that I can get across is think about it carefully and think about what suits your unique business needs. And generally, if you focus on the customer, what comes out of that are some brilliant business options, and therefore some wonderful options for your people. And I think that's where you need to get it all joined up. So it could be that you're working, you're working remotely. For example, we put in remote work for Saga Insurance. So they work remotely and they work annualized hours, and that means that they can cope with the storm damage time at the beginning of the year in the insurance market. So, they'll do more hours during January and February. And then the wonderful thing there is that people are having time off with their children in the summertime during the school holidays. So there's lots of different options, and I'm not decrying the 4-day week. It's a bit one-dimensional for me. I want to build something that's more that meets the needs of the business. Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Ruth. That's great insight. And so, Pawan, from the financial services sector, what you've seen, are any larger organizations starting to think about implementing this type of work environment or working pattern, I suppose?
Well, there's talk about doing something like this in Scotland. We're all aware of. There is a dimension of that, and there's a lot of services industry that sits out of it. Yeah. But I mean, personally, I do think, IT and finance is very much an intellectual kind work, right? It's not as linear as some of the operations work would be. If you have staff answering calls in the call center, that is just a dimension of, so many people need to be there to answer so many calls as such, right? Whereas where you're looking at more, for lack of better word, actually driven work, wherein I could knock out something in 45 minutes, or I could be sitting at it for 3 hours and not go anywhere. And the jobs are quite intense. The amount of thinking that is needed is quite intense. So I personally believe the more heavy lifting, more mental heavy lifting that you have to do, this could actually really change the game for you sometimes. And I think the other thing that has come about, especially in the last 1.5 to 2 years, is we are just filling up diaries with meetings for sake of filling it. It's a safe place. I'm busy. I have a job. I'm going to do something, and oftentimes saying, do we really need those meetings? So I think there is definitely a case in the industry I am in. I do firmly hold the view we will benefit from cutting down hours and going for that quality, going for really having that purpose, and just have some thinking time and thinking that not necessarily about work. It's sometimes going away from work and come back, look at it from fresh pair of eyes, and answer is there staring at you that you wouldn't have found if you sat on the screen for 4 hours. So I think there is a strong case. I am, for one, supporter in my industry, but although I do make note of what Ruth was saying about, one size fits all, it's one of the things that could work for a particular kind of business. I think for us, we could benefit from it. But it was really also interesting what David talked about, the USP and the competitive advantage, because capacity and shortage of digital talent, and we all know how much that is. And if only we could find a way for more people to come around and work with us and stay around longer, because we are offering something that nobody else is. I think that could work for us in more ways than one.
Yeah, absolutely. And interesting what you said there about having that time to think. Kevin and I actually are on sabbaticals at the moment. We're doing sort of like an hour, 2 hours of like really hard work per day, and we're always on hand for our teams. But we're sort of taking using these next 3 months to step back a little bit and think. And we've been doing it for about say about 3 weeks now. And the results, even just of ideas and stuff that's coming along, has been absolutely fascinating. And I'm sure Kevin would agree. So let me shout out a question for you then, Paul. And we had a little brief chat about this a couple of weeks ago, right, at the expo. And we were saying, how do we service? Does it work for our clients? How do we service the clients on the days that we don't that day we don't work? And do we lose business if a client needs a contractor or whatnot urgently on those days? So what were your thoughts?
Yeah, that's what I'm keen to find out today, to be honest with you. Hopefully David might be able to enlighten me on that. But I think there's been, when I was first, I think Kevin emailed me, and obviously I was at the NEC, and I came straight over and saw you at your stand, and we had a brief conversation about, the 4-day week aspect of if you go into a shop, you expect the shop to be open if you call your doctor or whatever it might be. And I didn't dismiss it out of hand, but I almost thought it's simple, of course. And then over the last couple of weeks, while I've been obviously looking into it with a view to today, obviously read an awful lot of studies, and absolutely the things that have been covered already by David, by Ruth, in terms of some of the positives that can come out of that. They sound fantastic. Obviously the well-being of the staff, everybody feeling more bought in and empowered. There's a huge challenge at the moment in recruitment, finding staff, as there is in most sectors. So David mentioning about the USP and not wanting everybody else to jump in, I can completely see that, because if it's a way of recruiting staff at the moment, that's fantastic. But what I keep coming back to, and interestingly, a lot of the studies that I read, after 3/4 of the text, it then says at the end, they decided not to continue because of, and most of the time it was because customer demand. I think there was one in America where people said they were fed up ringing up on a Friday and not being able to reach anybody. And, we have some teams who are quiet on a Friday. I definitely recognise David's point with regard to the post-lunch waiting until kind of 4:30 on a Friday. Certainly coming back into tech from healthcare, where healthcare was crazy busy on a Friday. But we have got other teams that are contracts, and obviously if somebody on a Friday afternoon realises they need a contractor on a Monday and we're not there to service that, then obviously that would be the big question mark. And as I say, I'm probably a lot more open to looking into this than probably I was 2 or 3 weeks ago when you first contacted me, because I've read so much about it. But I'm still not completely clear as to how it could work for everybody in every team, which probably ties into what Ruth covered. You're still on mute, Antonio.
Sorry. David, you raised your hand. How does it work for you then?
Yeah, slightly different to Paul here. I get the point about the contract recruitment where you need immediate action. We are mainly perm. We do have a contracting outfit, about 25-30% of net fee, but we are historically mainly a perm, and it's relatively high value, low volume, slow moving perm. Most of the stuff we do. No one's going to miss anything if they're out for one day. But the contracting, totally get that. I suppose the difference is my contracting people will still field a job on a Friday, but they'll do it from home, from the beach, from the supermarket, from whatever, rather than sitting in the office pretending to work, waiting for pub time to kick around. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Friday together to keep the team together Monday to Thursday. I have heard of other firms where they split half the team work Monday to Thursday, half the team work Tuesday to Friday. So you've got full weekly coverage and you've got the team properly together Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. A pure contracting operation and I was losing business on a Friday, I'd probably look at something like that because you'll pick up the other benefits of the 3-day weekend and still have 5-day coverage in the office. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was, when I was going through it again, that was one of the, I suppose, unintended consequences where if it works a part of the team and not the others, are they going to then feel that you're discriminating against one set of teams, and is everybody going to want to then work in that particular team? Because naturally the 4-day week sounds great. But yeah, no, there's definitely a lot more to it than like I say, like I thought. But yeah, it's just that contractual piece, and I suppose it's, as you say, there maybe needs to be some kind of on-call element to it. I'm not sure if Olivia is on the call, Antonio, but I was really keen to get Olivia's thoughts because obviously coming from the healthcare background, obviously we were 24/7 in healthcare. When we went home on a Friday, we handed over to an out of hours solution that obviously worked then, all over the weekend and every evening. And I suppose almost with this scenario in healthcare, you'd probably just be extending that, almost creating that 3-day weekend rather than a day when nobody's in, obviously.
Yeah, well, Olivia couldn't join today, but yeah, absolutely, that would have been good to get insight. So, Ketan, what are your thoughts? What do you think of the 4-day working week, and is it something that you've implemented or planning to, or are you against it?
I'm certainly not against it. Had you asked me this question pre-pandemic, I would have been, definitely against it, because I felt that I've worked very hard to create a team culture whereby everyone's in, but since the first lockdown, and it was a mindset thing for me, and also for the employees to work flexibly and remotely, and it works for us. I've seen huge improvements in productivity because I measure on output rather than hours spent in front of the desk or hours spent on the phone. It's output doesn't lie. So because that's the measure that we do. We do have our regular team meetings remotely every day, in fact, and we have a big meeting on a Monday. I'm not sure if the 4-day work week would work for Buckingham Futures because it's 80% contractual what we do. So because of the sort of, my biggest fear would be that if the consultant that the client is used to dealing with, and each of the relationships they have, if they're not available, they, rather than dealing with someone else within my business, they may want to, even though there's been a thorough handover, they may want to call another agency. That's my slight sort of worry. But as I say, there is a very flexible working approach, and at times when people are off, colleagues do cover their desks, so it can work. And I think it's a mindset change, not just from internally with our colleagues, but also internal and external stakeholders as well. That if they can understand that the same level of service could be provided by someone else within the business, if their regular contact is not there. So, but I've noticed that with people working remotely, fewer distractions. And most importantly, that it's better for the environment, and ultimately we're an environmental recruitment business. So the fact that there's not that commuting, that carbon efficiency is far better. And in recruitment, there's always been that. I've been working with recruitment for 25 years. There was that mindset. The more you get out, it's not really the case. It's what you put in is what you get out, not more, because you could make 20, 30, phone calls in an evening that amount to nothing, or you can make one good call that you get something out of. So with the flexible working, I've noticed certainly an improvement in staff well-being, both physical, mental, everything. Just when people do come and they appreciate being around the colleagues more, and everyone just seems happier. It works well for us. But the 4-day week, I mean, what David mentioned about sort of staggering the teams and splitting them into the first part of the week and the latter part of the week, and maybe do some sort of rota, because ultimately I think if there was a 4-day week, everyone would want a Friday off rather than the Monday. So then you've got to think about maybe do a fortnightly sort of, that this team will work from a Tuesday to Friday for 2 weeks, and then they'll do Monday to Thursday the following 2 weeks. That way that everyone gets the Friday off, which is probably the most desirable. So going back to your question, definitely not against it, but it's something I need to do more research on. And as Paul was saying, I've also been reading extensively around it, and ultimately most people that have within recruitment have implemented it, especially within the temporary divisions, have decided sort of to phase it out or not continue.
Cheers, Keaton. I like that. So some really some people sat on the edge, some people like just diving straight in. David, a question for you, and I don't know if you tackled this question when you first went into this, kind of like, this is what we're going to do. Obviously, a 4-day working week is good for the human being, the mental health, etc. What does it say, though, that about the human workforce, if they can do their job within a 5-day working week, a 4-day working week, and they're having a 5th day off? What does that say about the other companies that are out there, their productivity rates? Are you not losing a whole day of productivity from your business?
No, there's studies done which say in the UK at least, the average office worker only actually works 3 hours 12 minutes a day out of an 8-hour shift. There's a lot of chit chat and water cooler time and all the rest of it, scrolling, whatever. So if you take 5 times 3 hours 12, that gives you exactly 16 hours. So what we're saying is you're getting 16 hours worth of work, proper work, out of a UK office worker. Can you do 16 hours worth of work in 4 days? So that's 4 hours a day. So you've still got half a day's worth of chit chat, scrolling, and whatever. It's not a boot camp sweatshop, but it's frightening how little actual work is getting done by most people in an average working day. Yeah, and so you sustainable, and that's when you're going to burn your people out. You're going to lose your people. You're going to have increased sick notes, and you're going to struggle with staff retention. Okay, you can't drive them that hard on a 5-day continual basis long term. You can do it short term, fine, but long term that's going to punish you. Yeah. So what we've done is basically incrementally increase the productivity for 4 days, and the reward for working harder on those 4 days is a me day on the 5th day. And that's why I think the balance works for us. Because I've had this debate now with quite a few recruitment companies who are of the old school, drive them harder, work more, start earlier, finish later. And then what happens? They're losing their good people in less than 2 years and constantly churning and replacing and training new people who they're then going to drive like slaves. Yeah, it's not a sustainable practice to me.
Thank you, David. Ruth, what do you think of that about productivity on this 4 or 5 working week day through your smart working solutions?
Yeah, so we've done the research of with the organisations that we work with, and studies show that productivity dips after about 4.5 hours. It dips further in if you're office based than if you're working remotely or in a hub, especially if you're an introvert. So put an introvert by an office door or a lift, and you might as well give up, because they just can't get the work done. They can't get their head down. I can remember walking into a big drinks organisation a couple of years ago before the pandemic, and I walked through this massive IT department, and every one of them, mainly blokes, I have to say, they got their headsets on because they just needed that quiet time. And I think that introverts themselves have actually really benefited from this remote working experiment that we've gone through, because they have been able to get the heads down and get the productivity going but also in meetings, they've found a voice that they haven't naturally found when they've been in a big meeting room where the loud people get the attention. So, you know, I think there's a big part to play in terms of what personality type. I don't like to put people into boxes, but for the benefit of this discussion, I think, you know, if it's office based, then actually the distraction element is even bigger. Yeah.
Thank you. And that's really interesting. You, Dave, come up with like people work 3-4 hours a day, and therefore you don't actually lose any productivity. You're just pushing it into. Paul, where you've been like on the fence of this, would you see a loss of productivity if you went to a 4-day working week? Is that your fear? Is that what's stopping you from? I mean, me and Antonio, we don't have a 4-day working week. We keep talking about it, but we're kind of like, what happens? We look at people like David and obviously successful, and we sit on the fence. Paul, is you sitting on the fence? Is your concern the loss of productivity potential?
I think, as in David's example, I can completely imagine how, given the opportunity of a 3 or 6 month trial to prove 4-day working, you know, could work. I can see why everybody would boost productivity. I've seen similar studies in terms of the fact that people aren't working for 8 hours solid a day. I think we all know that. I think that the customer side is definitely more of a concern than productivity for the most part. And I suppose the other one, which without taking on a slightly different tact, would be, I saw on one of the studies, I think it was from way back, I think it was in the late 19th century, I think it was 1890 or something, they said the average working week was nearly 100 hours. We've then gone down to a 40-hour week that seems to have kept us going for, you know, for a large amount of time. We're now saying 4 days, and we just spoke about a study that says 3 hours, 12 minutes a day, I think it was. You know, are we going to be sitting here in 20 years and saying we need to go to 3 days? And to, you know, what makes 4 days the optimum, I suppose, would be the I don't know if it's a question or just it's just something that kind of, like I say, sort of where do you eventually stop with that? And is it that 4 days is correct, or is it a case of that's just the next thing, and then people start working slightly less within that, and then you go to 3.5 or whatever?
Because I think we're talking that the human being works 4 days, but the business sort of operates 5 days. We split that. David, you've got your hand up. Love.
Yeah, I was just going to chip in there, Paul, and say no promises as of yet, but I am very keen to trial a 3.5 day in time. And then to me, that is the optimum work-life balance. 3.5 days working, 3.5 days off. My people are good enough to do their job in 4. Are they good enough to do it in 3.5? It is something we're giving.
Yeah.
The optimum balance really would be 3.5. And then that is the perfect 50-50 work-life balance. As long as we're getting the results, there's no deviation, there's no slippage. And it's all down to the people. Some people just aren't good enough to do their job in 4 days. Yeah, and you've got to accept that. There's always going to be some people who are more driven, more motivated, more successful, brighter, cleverer, harder working, whatever. And some people just aren't going to be able to catch that benefit. And ultimately, no hard feelings. I'm trying to hire the people who are good enough to do that. Yeah, but that's where I'm going to try and take it in the future, is to a 3.5.
Do you see it as almost a graduation? So you join the company and you do 4 days, and then you move into these 3.5 days.
Possibly. We haven't really done that. What we do now with our new joiners, our rookies now, they come in immediately on a 4-day week. They're catching the benefit from day one, but they're indoctrinated. They're trained from day one. This is the speed. This is the pace you've got to work at to get your metrics done in a 4-day basis. Yeah, there's no passengers there.
Thank you. And Pat, what's your thoughts on productivity on a 4-day working week? Based on some of these figures, like 3.5 hour days and 4 hour days, getting all our work done within 16 hours.
Sorry, Kevin, is that?
Oh, I lost you there. What's your thoughts on the productivity gain or loss on a reduced working week?
Sorry, Kevin, can you hear me? Okay.
Oh, good. Can you hear me? April, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Kev.
Okay, Powen, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yep.
Okay, what's your what's your thoughts, opinions, and feelings around loss of productivity, or is there no loss of productivity?
I think two sides to it, right? So I do think I'm more with David in terms of the kind of work and the people we have are highly motivated, bright people who are coming in and would rather get things done sooner than later. And I think having 3-day weekend makes them even better. And I'm not thinking about this linearly. I'm not thinking everybody's taking Friday off, right? You could look at the rota, you could look at, real estate costs for offices are so much, the co-location, how the teams come about. There's a lot more to how you actually float around that extra day off as such. But getting extra time off, no question in my mind, at least from where I see it, definitely makes people more productive, gives them that clarity of thought. And that is worth beyond hours and minutes. In our business, if you have clarity of thought, that is a lot more than what somebody could churn out in 15 days. You could really land a piece of leadership or a different way of doing things that will save hours and days and years in cases. We're talking about technology. We are talking about how do we apply the robotics and the RPA to get things. So there's a scale we can operate with, we can achieve the scale of efficiency that we can achieve of thought or through really focusing on the right kind of things is well beyond what is the notional 20% loss of working hours as such. Having said that, I sit in services business. My concern, although I personally am convinced and strong supporter, and if I had it my way, we would actually pilot this sooner than later. Having said that, my worry is we work on day rate basis with our clients, right? So if I'm billing somebody on 5 days a week basis, and then we have to actually bring that down to 4 days, there's going to be reluctance in time and the commercial elements of that for them to come around. It's not going to be, oh, well, you guys are going to be more productive and we are going to give you an extra 25%. That's the only part, and maybe some people on the call who are ahead of me, and I'm looking at Ruth and David, you might have actually come across this, and maybe there is less of a resistance to this than I am perceiving it to be. But there is another side of it that is saying it's not just me being bought into it or the industry coming around. There are other third parties who may not be as open to it, and we are a customer-facing business. We would have to. We work from the locations that they prefer. If they say you're going to come to office, we are going to come to office. If they say we want to work you through, and the hours as such, right? So I think that's the only flip side, but that's the flip side that I am currently grappling with. But I'm sure there are a lot more pitfalls here as we make a change about something so big.
Thank you. So I'm going to move it to the other side of the coin now. We've talked about the positive, like the way that it helps people, it helps mental health, it helps productivity. And again, Ruth, I'm going to start with you. I want to talk about the negatives, and especially from David, see where you are with the negatives. Because I think there's a couple of people on the line now looking at the guests here and everything. They've probably joined to kind of find out, well, I'm sat on the fence here, and yes, it's all positive. We can get the stuff done within the 4 days, but come on, there's got to be some negatives about reduced week work. So, Ruth, can you kick us off with what, from a smart working point of view, what are the negatives, or are there any?
Well, yeah, there are pitfalls with any types of smart working, and all the different options have pitfalls. I mean, thankfully we've found them, or we've fallen into the pitfall so that you don't have to. But certainly with the 4-day week, and what you've got to understand is that some organisations are doing 40 hours in 4 days. Other organisations, in order to cut their costs at this difficult time for some companies, they've moved to 4 days and they've cut the hours as well. So lots of different organisations are doing lots of different things at this moment. There's really no one size fits all, and neither should there be. One of the problems that we've come across with the 10-hour shifts is that childcare for parents is particularly difficult to come by. For if you're looking at 10 hours. And so to a certain extent, some of our clients are worried that it will preclude parents. And so they've done different things. I think, you've got to work to outcomes, because you can't, when you work into a 4-day week, then you've not got that presenteeism that you've been used to as a leader. And so as a leader, there's a shift in the mindset that's required, where your leaders are developed to work to a shared vision, whether that's a shared vision of the 4-day week or a shared vision of the project that you're working on. You've got to build that two-way trust, because there may be people manning the office when you're not around, or they may be working remotely if you're running hybrid 4-day week as well. I think coaching becomes more to the fore. Leaders need to learn to coach, because that's the only way that they can build this ability to work to outcomes. So there's quite a few elements that organisations need to think about, and we talked about some of the other issues, like everybody wanting the same day. Well, you've got to balance that, a bit of workforce management, and we've got all these wonderful IT people around, so we can manage that. So yeah, there's a couple of, I think I've written down 10 pitfalls for a 4-day week, but there you go.
Let's jump over to David then. You've done it, you're doing it. What are the negatives?
There aren't really, seriously, or not from in my experience. Okay, you might miss the odd call, but then every recruiter has got a mobile phone, yeah? And you show me a good recruiter who's not on their phone 7 days a week anyway, on Sunday evening included. They're not. We outsourced inbound switchboard to a call center, so inbound calls are picked and act on urgent matters that day. There is an expectation that they would do that. But they're, like I say, they're not sitting in the office pretending to work. They can be out and about, actually getting on with their lives. And if they've got to make or take 1 or 2 calls on that 5th day, so be it. No one's going to die. I don't see any benefits, any negatives from it. Not that we've come across. Genuinely, and I'm not just fudging that and giving it a bit.
How does that make you feel, Paul, that there's no negatives to it?
Love it. You're getting a full pay for a 3-day weekend. You've got more energy. You've got some me time. I had kids straight out of uni. Since we've implemented this, it's the first time I've had me time in about 27 years. Wow. Yeah, and that is quite glorious. When I wasn't in the office before and the office was open, I had a massive FOMO. I was always worrying about what was going on, what was happening, what am I missing out on, what's going to go wrong with me not being there. But with everybody being out on a Friday, I don't have that anymore. I can actually enjoy a day off without worrying about stuff, which used to be quite crippling sometimes, actually. When you took a day off, get some rest and relaxation, and you're constantly waiting for the phone call and point of view, yeah.
Thank you. So I'm just gonna go around there and Paul, what was let's say you come off of this and you go, do you know what, we are going to implement it for? What's your biggest fear? What's your biggest fear of doing it? Why doesn't everyone just do it? If David's right, Ruth's seen it, Powan's seen it. Why doesn't everyone just go ahead and do it? What's the biggest fear out there that people are thinking about right now?
I think, like I said at the start, and like David's recognised, perhaps is the slightly different business mix. I think there is a percentage of my business where this would I think it's pretty similar to David's by the sound of it in terms of senior permanent hires where there's a process that will take a number of weeks and therefore, someone being off and knowing that they're going to be off, if they need to grab a call, and quickly kind of remind someone of an address for an interview, they're going to be happy to do that, as part and parcel of their normal things, like they would take a call in the evening or a weekend anyway. As I say, the biggest obstacle for me are the clients where, I suppose it's an education of them as well, but the clients where we are expected to be there. If there is an urgent call, certainly on the contract side, I don't really see, other than having some kind of out of hours service, I don't see how a client is going to be happy if they have an urgent requirement on a Friday that they need someone to start on a Monday, which is relatively rare, but obviously the SLAs are in place, the contract is in place for us to provide that service if needed. So I suppose the bigger challenge for me would be the kind of internal discrimination of, one team having one set of rules and another team that look after a different set of clients having another, which, I suppose possibly is a little bit of a can of worms in its own right. But in principle, the business that's more similar to David's, I can completely see the logic, because the biggest surprise for me coming back into tech from healthcare has been remembering I did it a long time ago, and I had many years in healthcare, and I've kind of forgotten what a Friday was like, because healthcare, like I say, Friday was busy. You had your out of hours, your on call, prep for the weekend. You had hospitals ringing and saying, "Oh, I've just realised I need someone else on Sunday night," or whatever it might be. So Fridays was mega busy. And then coming back into IT, it's a very different vibe. Certainly post lunchtime, when maybe people have gone out and had a big lunch and maybe a couple of drinks, and you are just sort of ticking through the afternoon. And I can very much see the benefit there. And as I say, I think it would be more the internal dispute as to who would want to work on what team if it got them a 4-day week.
Beautiful. Yeah, some really valid points there. How and why isn't everyone doing this? What's stopping everyone? From your point of view, why don't we all just go and do it?
I guess it's not for everyone. I don't think this is going to work out as such, or it's even right for everyone, right? So there are areas and there are aspects of work that there is a social aspect of work. There are other things that we have missed over the last 2 years that kind of go against it. It's true. There are industries that effort is a pure function of time, right? Or rather, a value is a pure function of time and effort. Whereas there are areas wherein the value is non-linear. You could come up with an idea and work on things that can give you disproportionate advantage, or you can achieve a lot more in the time you work. So I'm not sure if it is for everyone, and even across industries within financial services and technology and the operation side of the business. I don't think this is for everyone, and that's a bit we would have to evolve. And I shared some of the fears that Paul was mentioning about. Is there internal discrimination? A team is getting benefited because they're working on the right kind of client that is supportive of that, and the other team actually wants to be there, but they are not. So I think there is a lot of nuances that need to be worked through, and I think in some ways teams would have to self-determine whether it's right for them. The individuals would have to figure out whether it is right for them, right? I have people who actually do not mind working Sunday afternoon. They'll do their email business Sunday afternoon. It's not that we want them to, but they would do that. And that's their way of doing things. That's their way of how they've organized their life around it. And I want to leave that to self-determination. So I'm not sure if it's for everyone, but there is a lot of us should at least seriously consider this and determine for ourselves, our teams, our companies, our industries, whether it's right for us.
I like that. We have David Anderson with his hand up. David, have you got a question or a point of view?
It's really just a point. Working in an organisation with the best part of 400,000 employees, the digital platforms and where you are in terms of the investment in those platforms, I think, also plays a part, because there's leadership focus is one thing, and the culture and everyone sort of signing up to a 4-day week. But I think there's the ability to support that on a digital level. It's just a point, really.
Thank you. So just to kind of, we've gone over the positive, we found there's no negatives. And then we've got this kind of like in between level of kind of like, will it work for everyone? Is it down to the individual? Is it down to the individual business? What happens if we were put into a situation where, hypothetically, the 9 to 5 was put in place by Henry Ford to try and stop sort of like slave labor back in 1926. That's where the 48 hours actually come from. So what happens if we're put in a situation where maybe with digital enhancements, etc., where we say to look, just work whenever you want, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day? Wouldn't that kind of solve all of these, the whole issue, and let people decide, as long as Ruth was saying, it's outcome based, you get your job done. Powen was saying it's an individual and the business needs, etc. David, what's your thoughts? Just get rid of 9 to 5, 40 hours a week, go 24/7. Let them do.
Yeah, in some respects, you'd say, yeah, that's supremely valid. But, and this would be my caveat, where I've seen plenty of occasions now where companies introduce perk, and in many cases it had to be withdrawn after a period, because some people, they don't know what the norm is and they don't know what they should and shouldn't take, so they end up taking any vacation whatsoever. Unbelievable great perk ended up being self-defeating, because people ended up taking less holiday leave than they're meant to, and then for getting more tired and more burnt out, because you don't know. So if you're saying, all right, do whatever you want, mate, just work whenever you want, whatever you feel like, off you go, son. There are going to be some people who'll be doing 21 hours a day and killing themselves, yeah? And they'll be, yeah, you'll get the odd skiver, he'll do 1 or 2 hours here and there. But I think a lot of people need the direction. Now, you might be able to get to that by saying, here's your KPIs, here's your targets, here's your outputs, just make sure you've done them. I've often said to my own staff, I don't really care what hours you work. If you're getting the job done, I genuinely don't care what hours you're in the office. Yeah. So we've got flexi time, we've got a working day as a guideline. But if somebody is absolutely destroying their targets in 3 days a week, I don't really care, frankly. Yeah. But I don't think everybody is be fatal in the medium term.
Thank you. Ruth, what's your point of view on that? A 24/7 working week. Let them do what they want.
Yeah, and I think in some industries that'll work, and I think, you know, with some individuals it will work, and we've got to think about young people coming into the workplace and how we can help them to understand this idea of working to outcomes. And it takes a lot of trust, and this is, you know, one of the key issues around smart working is building what we call two-way trust. And we talk about the ABCD of trust, where as leaders we've got to first of all ensure that our people have got the capability to do the job. So that's the A, able. B, for believability. Do we believe that they will do the job and they'll do it properly and they'll keep our customers happy? And C is for compassion. We've got to find out what makes one another tick, as well as our customers, so that we can help and support and guide one another. And D, being dependable, keeping our promises, and hitting deadlines and that sort of thing. So as leaders, we've got a big piece to put in place in terms of building that two-way trust and helping our workers to trust us as well. And I think once you've got that then you can start to work to outcomes. We've got to look at other parts of these organizations. So for example, David runs a very successful recruitment company. Some of the organizations that we work with, for example, I was talking about the housing associations and councils to a certain extent, they have many different types of workers. So they've got the tradespeople, who you can't really say to them work whenever you want, because they've got to go and fix things, got to go and fix a boiler or electricity or whatever. Whereas customer services, they'll have demands coming in, and they'll have to meet those demands and talk to the customers. Accountants, yeah, they can probably do stuff to suit the requirements of the business. You know, accountants work a lot more hours generally at the end of the month, at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year, and so they can have time off elsewhere. I think the key thing here, and we're often asked about, what about equity? You know, what about being fair? And our answer to that is, you choose the job that you do, and with that comes a certain set of restrictions, challenges, or opportunities with that job.
Interesting stuff, Ruth. Thanks for that. One of the things that I'm thinking, you know, and it's slightly off topic actually, but does tie in slightly with sort of ways that we need to start looking after staff more. And I really like what you said that earlier, David, about, you know, that people do need that sort of guidance. You know, they do need some sort of boundaries, right? So the Great Resignation that's happening right now, you know, millions upon millions of people are quitting their jobs or moving to other, well, firstly quitting, moving into other industries. And obviously this was, I think, inspired by the pandemic in my mind. People sort of started thinking about what's really important and whatnot. So this Great Resignation, 1 in 4 people are leaving jobs now, right, and moving to somewhere else. So obviously it's a great way of being able to, I guess, how do you put it? It's a great way of being able to attract staff. But also, do you think, and I want to chuck this out to anyone who wants to answer this question, do you think that people are getting tired, like the masses are getting tired of the concept of work? Now, obviously, we need to pay for things, but do you think that people are just becoming a bit more less focused on work and more focused on sort of, you know, fulfillment and whatnot? Be interested to hear what you, and that's one of my feelings of why the Great Resignation is happening. But I'd be interested in hearing what anyone else thinks on that.
Yeah, so I think, Antonio, what we're seeing is that people want what I call good work. They want to work for organisations that do care about them, and that do care about the environment, and do care about the fact that they've got children, or they've got a disability, or they're a carer. So I think that's one of the reasons that we're seeing that this resignation, this Great Resignation happening. I think it'll settle down, but the dinosaurs amongst the employers will lose the good people to these more thoughtful leaders, more caring organisations.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with my brother about it actually, and we were discussing around, like, companies need to start taking care of employees more, so in different ways, right? And obviously thinking about their mental wellness, that's really important. If I go about the opposite though, just to pay counter to this, isn't it the job of people to look after themselves? If organisations have to start prompting people to, you know, to take care of their mental wellness, their fitness, and all that sort of stuff, then doesn't it become sort of more nanny state, and the company is more of a like a parent than, you know, a provider of I guess, you know, work. What do you think, Pawan?
I think a lot of mental health issues cannot be just completely separated as, you know, here are your personal issues that is stemming into mental health, and here is work-related stress that's contributing to it, right? So it's not so much of a nanny state. I don't want you know, my employers to have records of any counseling that our employees are going through as such. But also at the same time, you can't really separate, and a large part of at least 20-25 years of work is a big part of our life. It defines us, and some of us more than others. So I think a lot of stress, or what is then manifesting itself into a mental health, cannot be completely peeled off or separated from what we do at work. and creating a little bit more space. And I also think at least over the last 10 years or so, our work hours and the intensity and has gone up, and the privileges, not just the pay packets, but the whole perks and the value has diminished or at least flatlined during the last 10 years. And that, to me, that is one of my hypotheses. The jury is out on the great resignation. But one of my hypotheses is this has been built up over a period of time that is leading to it. So I do think employers, going back to your point around mental health, I do think employers have a big part to play for the well-being, for the mental well-being of their employees as such.
Yeah, of course. I think we do play a part, and absolutely, and I think we have to give the right environment. But again, the question I have is that when does it become the responsibility of the employer, and not the responsibility of the employee? Do you know what I mean? To focus on themselves. And I think we could have an hour and a half conversation all around this topic alone, right? It's a very interesting one, and maybe actually that should be the next war room, Kevin. But when does it become the responsibility of the employee to make sure that their mental wellness is being looked after, they are stable? When does it become instead of the responsibility of the employer? Do you know what I mean? Because I'm of the opinion that, and this is just my personal opinion, that we have to take ownership of our own lives as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the only point I'll make to that is I don't think it's an either or there. I think there is two things have an overlap, and in my mind, it'll always have an overlap. But I think I've had my fair share of opinion on that today.
Yeah, David, what do you think? You raise your hand.
Stay in the UK, and that's most all of us have ever known from the age of, well, from birth pretty much cradle to grave, isn't it? We are living in a nanny state, and I'm a massive fan of self-sufficiency. From looking after themselves, there must be some self-recognition and self-responsibility there as well. But yes, as an employer, you do have a duty of care to your people. And going back to the point about the Great Resignation, I think the pandemic gave a lot of people a chance to sit back and reflect about, do I need to be getting on the 6 o'clock train into London every morning? Is that actually how I want to live my life? Leaving the house before the kids are awake and getting home after the kids are in bed? And is there a better way of doing it? And I think it's quite a timely intervention in many respects. And there's going to be a shakeout. And the companies with unscrupulous owners who are exploiting their staff, they're going to lose, and they're going to lose hard. The people who have actually got a social conscience and look after their people and actually genuinely care about their people, they're going to win. And that's my view on that, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I absolutely agree with that. It's an interesting, and it actually fits in with what you were just saying, Ruth. I see you've got your hand up as well. So do you have an input on that?
Yeah, yes, I've got 3 points. I think one of your questions was when does it become a problem for an employer? I think it becomes a problem when we cause it. So when we cause that anxiety or that stress, then that's when it becomes a problem for us. I think the Great Resignation, like David has just said, is people taking control. They are taking control of their own destiny. And in terms of people being resilient and taking responsibility for their own mental health, I absolutely agree with that. And I'm a big believer in recruiting people with good levels of resilience and encouraging people to build good levels of resilience within the corporate world, because we do need it from time to time, because life gets tough, and we all know that.
Well, that's absolutely true. I think that resilience piece is really important. I think even in schools today, we need to be doing a bit more around that, around how do we educate people in receiving feedback and and not taking things personally and that type of stuff. I think that's really a character based I guess issue, isn't it?
It's
Very
absolutely right, Antonio, and we don't do enough of those life skills through our education system, and we need to do more of that. We need to help people to understand what it takes to build resilience and to take responsibility for their own lives. And if they don't like something, move on, but don't be a victim. But we don't generally help people to learn in terms of emotional intelligence, and I think that's what it's all about, and it's missing in society.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree, and I think anyone who has young children in school, I think if we take or children in general, we take this whole age of where we're all on social and everyone has an opinion, but people do not like hearing negative stuff. You just only like likes, right? Likes and praise. And of course, when negative stuff comes your way, you take it really personally. And I think particularly if it's in an online setting, so 100% cannot agree more around how we need to be working more on emotional intelligence, EQ, building that muscle up, which is really important. Paul, you've got your hand up, bud. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I think the other thing I would just add to that is certainly in my team, there's a fair amount of them that are a lot younger than me, and I think the last couple of years for many of us has been tough and challenging. And I think for us trying to get back to what we considered normal previously, or at least some semblance of that, hasn't been the easiest. But we've got 10, 15, 20 years of normality to compare against to know what we want to get back to. I think for some of the guys that are in my team, they might have had less than a year maybe in the working world, and then had the rug completely swept away from as it was with the COVID restrictions, the lockdown, being in your early 20s or even late teens in lockdown. I can only imagine how tough that may be. And if you think about what your lives are like at that point, you're out and about with your friends, you're doing lots of fun things, and that was taken from them. So I think you've then got everybody trying to get back to normality and get back to the economy and companies, getting back into profitability ultimately. And at the same time, you've got people that have had almost more time in a COVID working world than perhaps I had previously. And I think I can only imagine as to how that could be, playing havoc with people's, mental well-being. So in terms of it as an employer, yes, obviously I agree, there is a personal responsibility, but I think we've got to try to do whatever we can to support that and recognise that everybody's going to be at very different stages based on their own life, age, experience.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Guys, it's we've got 15 minutes left, and I've gained some knowledge, and I've also I'm tipping the fence more towards this than I was before.
Yeah, me too, Kevin. Actually, I think David, thanks a lot for your insights on this. It's been really interesting because I do feel like your experience has actually tipped me as well in my mindset around actually getting, I'm basically 98% there towards implementing a 4-day work week for our staff across the globe. So thanks for that, David. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so it's something that we've been discussing probably about 2-3 years now, and it's one of the reasons why we brought this topic up and wanted everyone's opinions. Just to wrap up, I'd just like to go round, and David, I'll start with you. I see your hand up, and after your point, if you could just wrap up and let us know what you've taken away from it, maybe your last words.
Okay.
Keaton, I'll then come to you, Ruth, Paul, and Power, and we'll finish off with you, and just a statement on where you are sat with this topic. That'd be great.
Okay.
David.
The point. My company, we're perfectly recruitment, a perfect job for 4-day week. It's sales, it's APIs, it's targets. Can you hit those numbers in a 4-day week? Brilliant, off you go. Jobs are good, right? I would love to see a study, though. Say if you took nursing with massive. If you gave them, they can't do 5 days worth of nursing in 4, right? But if you gave the nurses a 4-day week, paid them for 5, what would be so that automatically increases your salary bill by 20% because you've got to pay for the increased cover. But what would be the benefits to the NHS of doing this in terms of less absenteeism, less churn, less training, less replacing all these poor people who've just hit the wall and been burnt out. And I would love to see a pilot study done in a sector like that, because the benefits aren't just, hey, hit your numbers and have a day off. It's a myriad of health benefits and mental health benefits. And when you look at jobs like, say, teaching or like nursing, where the burnout and churn and stress rate is so debilitating, I'd love to see what impact this could have. All that covering absenteeism, if a company could do that. So that was the point I was just going to throw in. Sorry, what was the other point you wanted me to say?
Just a statement of where, obviously we know where you are, you've been there and done that, but have you taken anything away from today? Is there anything that's sparked your interest? And just a wrap-up statement, really.
Yeah, I'll pick. I think I'm connected to Paul Springles on LinkedIn. I'm going to pick up with him separately, and possibly Ketan made a couple of points. I might pick up with him as well. He said a couple of things that I might pick up privately offline, separately next week. I think try it. And my top advice, when we did it, we went from 5-day to 4-day, bang, that was it. If I had my time again, I would have done a 6-month, 4.5-day week trial. Give people Friday afternoon off for free, because frankly, there's sod all work getting done Friday afternoon. So that's a free. Went into it hard, and yeah, all right, we made it work, but it was quite tricky at first. So I'd say consider it, but consider going 4.5-day first, and then win the right to have a 4-day week thereafter. That's what I'd do if I had my time again.
Thank you very much, Keaton. Let's wrap up with your thoughts and what you've taken away from this session.
So I came to the session with a completely open mind, and having sort of done some research around the 4-day week, I knew that the benefits certainly outweigh the drawbacks. Or if there were any drawbacks, David have kind of sort of actually he's given counter arguments to one of the drawbacks that I did have in my mind. So there aren't really any drawbacks as such. One thing that with any changes within my business, I'm not one to take an immediate step, and as David was saying, like with small steps, like gradual steps. So maybe start off with the sales team doing a 4.5-day week, then the support team doing the 4.5-day week, and then gradually see how that works. If it doesn't have any impact on the business, then make it more permanent. So that's what my main takeaway from is that something I'm definitely going to look into, speak to my senior team members about, and slowly, in small steps, implement over the coming weeks and months.
Thank you very much, Keaton.
Thank you.
And next, I'm going across pictures on my screen. Paul, you're next on there. What's your wrap up?
Yeah, I think I would mirror what Ketan said there, really. Firstly, thanks to everybody, because it's been really interesting building up to today and reading some of the studies that have been done, and certainly getting some perspectives today, obviously, especially from David, who's actually done that in a very similar sector to myself. Certainly look forward to the call next week. And yeah, David probably took the words out of my mouth a little bit there, that I could definitely see a phased consideration in terms of that Friday afternoon initially, and as you say, making people, if people can prove that that's there's no impact to the business, or it's a positive impact to the business, more to the point, then there's no reason we couldn't look to extend that.
Thank you so much. Ruth, you're next on my screen. What's your wrap up? What's your thoughts of what have you taken away?
Okay, thanks, Kevin. I think from my perspective, I think the big message is engage with your people. Let them help you build the right workforce model for your business and your customer base, whether that's the 4-day work week or something else. Pilot before you decide to make it contractual, and train your leaders to shift their mindsets. That's really crucial, and train your people to work to outcomes. So I think we've all talked about this today, and it's been an interesting session. So thanks very much, Kevin and Antonio.
Thank you, Ruth. And Pawan, last and certainly not least, what's your wrap up from here?
No, thank you. Thanks again for getting me on this panel. Quite an enriching discussion, quite a wide lenses, very different background people have come on it. So it was quite enriching. I definitely have picked up a few dimensions and perspective that I wouldn't have just thought about researching on my computer. So thank you everyone on the panel for sharing the thoughts on that. I still think it's early days while this is something, and I hear it loud and clear when Ruth says pilot. We would have to experiment so much about it and be ready that it is not going to work. There's no point me going into it saying it has to work and I'll keep piloting it till it works, right? So I think there is a lot more, and there are dimensions that we didn't get to explore. There is a whole social aspect of the 3 days while we're not there. What does that do? There's the entire, it's a COP26 is around the corner, so there is an entire environment dimension to it, saying what does it mean in that space. There is a whole political angle. So there are definitely a lot more layers to this that are worth discussing about, and I for sure will be out and about doing the same, and would love to have an opportunity to speak more on this.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. And just before I let all the panelists get on with their day, any of the guests that are here sat listening, do you have any questions for anyone on the panel today? If you do, raise your hand. Good. Okay. We will put this through marketing. They will trim it. They'll make it into pretty, and we will circulate it out to everybody that's here. In that email will be a link to the Leadership War Room WhatsApp chat. It's an area where people just talk about what's going on. News articles get shared in there, stuff that's happening. Please feel free to join that chat group. It's non-transactional. There's no business related in there. It's just pure value content. And we will put together the next one and hopefully see you on the next one. So thank you ever so much for really valuable.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Antonio, and thank you everyone else for the great insights.
Very good.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Look forward to seeing you on the WhatsApp. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.